Welcome to Cooking with Bobbi Jo. Bobbi Jo is still outside enjoying this weather, so I'm on my own in the kitchen today. We are making a delicious human treat. We will be making more doggy treats soon and even a doggy birthday cake because Bobbi Jo turns 3 in 2 weeks. Today's human treat is homemade sandwich bread in my new Lodge cast iron loaf pan. This definitely gets the drawer-worthy stamp of approval. Leanne with Mennonite Farmhouse had a great video on how to make this bread, and this is where I got the recipe from. I'll put her link in the video description. As many of you know, my stand mixer quit working around Thanksgiving, and I've been waiting until I saw a really good sale on a stand mixer with a dough hook before I purchased a new one. Of course, the cost of everything has been going up instead of down, so I just kept putting it off. With MS, my hands hurt, so it's difficult to knead dough by hand. Therefore, I haven't baked any bread in the last few months. I had a very nice couple that watches the channel gift me a magnificent gift. They want to remain anonymous, so I will not shout out any names, but I am so thankful and blessed to have received this beautiful KitchenAid mixer. It is even blue to match my kitchen, and it has all of these attachments with it. I wasn't looking at KitchenAid mixers because I'm cheap. So thank you for this beautiful gift. I will get a lot of use out of it. I will make some human and doggy treats and send your way. We're going to start out making this bread, and we're going to start out by adding 3/4 a cup of water to the mixer bowl. And if you want to be precise, you can get out a thermometer and measure the temperature. It should be between 100 and 110 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't use a thermometer. I just stick my finger in the water to feel how warm it is. If it burns, then it's too hot. Then I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of sugar, and I mix that together, and then I sprinkle 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast over the sugar and water. I saw Leanne on Mennonite Farmhouse say she stores her yeast in a jar in the freezer, and I do that same thing. It lasts longer that way. This recipe doesn't call for proofing the yeast. You can if you're worried about old yeast, but I know my yeast is good because I used it just a couple of days ago. You want to then add in 3 cups of flour. I'm using bread flour, but I'm sure all-purpose flour would work just fine too. I buy my flour in bulk and I store it in glass jars with oxygen absorbers to keep it fresh longer, but you can also store flour in the freezer. I'm going to start mixing that, and I turn my mixer on 1. I have never used a mixer with a dough hook, so this is kind of exciting. I've always done it the old-fashioned way. I mixed it by hand, I kneaded it by hand. Then add in a 1/2 cup of milk. Then I'm adding in 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter. The recipe calls for softened butter, but I have it at room temperature and I cut it into tablespoon sized pieces. Then add 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. Then just let it mix. I'm turning it up to 2. It shouldn't stick to the bowl. See how mine is sticking to the bottom of the bowl? I'm going to add an additional tablespoon of flour until it no longer sticks. Once it's no longer sticking, you just want to let it knead for about 7 to 8 minutes. I could have probably done 1 more tablespoon, but I'm just going to go with this since I already have the dough out of the bowl. The dough feels good. I'm going to fold the dough under itself to create a ball. I'm placing some olive oil in my mixing bowl, and I'm just going to stick it back in the bowl. Some people clean the bowl up, then they stick it in there, but I don't worry about cleaning it since the dough was just mixed in it. Cover the dough with oil, and then you need to cover it to rise. You can use plastic wrap or whatever you want. I just wet a towel with warm water, wring it out, place it over the bowl. I placed it in the oven with the light on for 1 to 2 hours until it has doubled in size. Okay, it's been 1.5 hours. Look at that. Now I'm going to punch the dough down. I'm going to knead it a few times. And my cast iron loaf pan is greased. I want to work my dough out to the size of the pan. And you want to make sure you make the dough go in the direction you want it to go. Sometimes it likes to go in the opposite direction than what you actually want it to go. I'm going to get a glass and I'm going to roll it out. Of course, you can use a rolling pin if you want. That's what most people use. Then you want to roll it up. You want to make sure you're tucking the ends inside and pinch the seam closed. Roll the seam over itself. Place it seam side down in the pan. And now we're going to do the second rise. Without thinking, I put my towel that I had just used in the bin I have for dirty towels. So I'm just going to go ahead and wet some paper towels and place it over it to rise the second time. The second rise is only for 30 minutes. I'm going to leave it out on the counter to rise. I will preheat my oven to 375 degrees in 15 minutes and I will see you back in 30 minutes. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? And it just occurred to me that I forgot to cut a piece of the dough off. This recipe calls for a 9x5 loaf pan, and a Lodge cast iron loaf pan is only 8.5 by 4.5 inches. So I have a little more dough than I need in my pan. I think it'll be okay, although it is already above the top of the pan, so I'm not sure how much more it will rise in the oven, but we shall see. Okay, let's take it out of the oven. Oh my goodness, look at that beautiful loaf of bread. This house smells so amazing, y'all. I'm going to brush some butter over the bread. And it's cooled for about 10 minutes now. Now I'm going to go around it with a butter knife to make sure none of the edges are sticking, and they aren't. I'm going to enlist Steve's help again. I'm going to lift the loaf of bread out of the pan while he removes the pan from underneath so I can place the bread on the rack to cool. Now you should let your bread cool completely, but mine is still warm. As you can see, it is steaming. It's getting late. My father-in-law will be stopping by soon to pick up 3/4 of this loaf of bread. So I want to taste test it before I give it away, because I don't want to give away something that it might taste bad. Who knows? So I need to taste it first. Okay, so the heel of the bread, or the end slice, is so crunchy on the outside and soft on the inside. I'm usually not a big fan of end slices, but on homemade bread, it is the best part. I am very happy with how this loaf turned out. Well, there you have it, homemade sandwich bread. Y'all should really try this recipe. It is simple. It's just time consuming because you have to wait for it to rise, but it is simple and delicious. It gets the drill-worthy stamp of approval times 10. Don't forget to check back Saturday for a cooking short. It will only take 60 seconds of your time to watch. Then Monday for another episode of the Lake Hills City Birds. You will not want to miss Monday's episode. We had some bird action happening at the post office. Thanks for watching, and y'all have a very blessed day.